One of our nation's, personal opinion, most adept at straw clutching lobby groups, the venerable Electric Vehicle Council of Australia, has proudly just announced an entirely fake milestone of sales misinformation, seemingly. 100,000. Imagine that. Thank God, at last. However, problematically, the actual number of battery EVs, like Teslas, for example, and all the rest that are built that way with just batteries and electric motors, the actual number of those which have actually been sold, i.e. the ones that don't have any kind of combustion engine, is just 82,960. So, to me, this looks like an even more epic liberty with the truth than is usual for a lobby group. Are they really that desperate? I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Card. Bullshit is, of course, a remarkable engineering material, isn't it? The dizzying height to which it might be stacked by experts really is amazing to me. There doesn't actually appear to be any kind of physical limit. One of the most salient features of our culture is that there is so much bullshit. Everyone knows this. Each of us contributes his share. But we tend to take the situation for granted. Harry G. Frankfurt there, Professor Emeritus of Philosophy at Princeton University. And that was the opening 3 sentences of his remarkable book, which is really just more of an essay. It's called On Bullshit, and you've got to read it, dude. It will change the way you think about the world. I agree totally with the good professor, but I would also argue that bullshit is a cake of sorts. And some of us seem far better at baking than others. And it seems to me that the Electric Vehicle Council here is one of society's best bullshit bakeries. It's quite rare, at least for me, to see a press release this seemingly, to me at least, infested quite this deeply with, let's be kind, quasi-truths. They really do seem to be troweling it on to dizzying new heights. This report is sponsored by NordVPN. Get a huge discount plus 4 extra months of Nord for free right now in Nord's Black Friday exclusive deal. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC. Online security threats are, of course, everywhere, but you do not have to be the next victim. And that's where NordVPN comes in, locking everything down efficiently in the background. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Every 2-year NordVPN plan receives a huge discount plus 4 bonus months on top. nordvpn.com/AEJC. Link in the description. Using NordVPN is dead easy. You just subscribe, download the app, and you connect. 1 click later, your IP address is shielded and your traffic is encrypted across as many as 6 of your devices. Nord is, of course, the fastest VPN on the planet. It costs only about as much as 1 cup of coffee every month to keep your data, your identity, and your devices secure. Masking your location means you'll be able to access streaming and other services that might be blocked where you live, plus you can continue to watch your favourite content when you travel. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now, boost your security, get that huge discount, and enjoy those extra 4 months completely free on every 2-year plan. It's all totally risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/AEJC, link in the description. Okay, so let us bake. 2024 has been a record-breaking year for EV uptake in Australia, with new sales surpassing 100,000 for the first time in a year, and that's before the year has even ended. Okay, so just decompiling this for a moment, what they've done is somewhat arbitrarily add plug-in hybrid sales to battery EV sales to surpass 100k. And golly gee, Jim Bob, they've declined to disclaim anywhere in this 279-word ode to misrepresentation that they have actually done this. This is from Drive. In a March 2024 report titled Australian Electric Vehicle Industry Recap 2023, it said it, quote, defines electric vehicles as any vehicle that can be plugged in to charge directly using electricity. The lobby group said this is, quote, consistent with international literature and groups such as the International Energy Agency. It seems to me that there's really two definitions of EV when you think about it. First would be the pub definition, and second, we'd have an official definition for brainiacs. In the pub definition, I suppose, an EV is one that has a battery and electric motors instead of that pesky combustion engine. Kind of like a Tesla. If we vox pop 1 million people in the street, I feel that this is what most of them would be saying an EV is. In the official definition for brainiacs, and if you don't mind, I'm going to go with the Australian Renewable Energy Agency on this one. EVs are officially battery EVs, plug-in hybrid EVs, and hydrogen fuel cell EVs. So the Electric Vehicle Council appears to be using neither definition here, which I suppose is kind of convenient. If you need a $100,000 number, you can just make shit up. The actual number of battery EVs sold here so far in 2024 to the end of November is 82,960. The truth is, by the time we say sayonara 2024, the likely number of battery EVs sold in Australia is going to be about 90,500, which is 82,960 for 11 months, extrapolated out for 12 months in a linear way. Last year's total was 87,217, so it's looking like a lift of about 3.8% in EV sales, despite new, cheaper EV entrants, massive ongoing discounts on Tesla, MG's overstocking discount disaster on MG4, and the zero FBT government incentive, which is ongoing. That's a lot of commercial incentive for not very much market response. Perhaps we are actually approaching the number of people who would tolerate an EV. Like, owning an EV is not easy, especially if you're not in an ideal situation, if you've got to rely on public charges, can't park in your own garage or off the street or something of that nature. EV sales, I'd have to say, with all this push behind them, seem rather disappointing to me at this stage, not just in Australia either. This is happening around the developed world. When you look at the effort that we have expended to push them into the public domain and make them front of mind for many people who might not otherwise consider them, 3.8% year-on-year growth is pathetic. Reaching this annual milestone of 100,000 EV sales is a clear signal that Australians want modern, sustainable cars that are fun to drive. That's Ammon Gower. Hope I didn't mispronounce that. He's the lobby group's cheese of policy, legal, and advocacy. He's a lawyer and an economist. What a double whammy. Which actually suggests a lot to me. Like, that's how NASA got the crew of Apollo 13 back, right? By getting society's best lawyers and economists and locking them in a room, slamming the door until they figured it all out. Both of these professions, personal opinion, think that everything is negotiable. Economists actually think economics is a science. Like, economists do, don't get me started. They all seem to think economics is kind of like physics, only harder. So, tell me, Big G, which bit of killing an hour waiting for a charge in some godforsaken shithole hundreds of k's from home in bum is the fun to drive bit? Exactly, because I've been there and I didn't feel it. One of the easiest ways to save money right now is by driving an electric car. Australians can save thousands of dollars a year by avoiding high petrol prices and expensive mechanics costs with no apostrophe from petrol cars. Yeah, dude, good plan. Spend $20,000 to $30,000 more than for an equivalent combustion car just to start saving money on fuel. Only an economist, perhaps, could say that to the public with a frickin' straight face. Come on. Australia's most popular car is the Ford Ranger, and in its most thirsty form, it drinks 8.4 litres per 100 k's. That's for the V6 diesel Wildtrak, okay, which would probably be the most popular one. Average k's per year across the Australian light vehicle fleet is about 15,000. So that's 150 times 8.4 times, what is it now, about $1.85 a litre currently. So multiply that all out, take away Chris Bowen's IQ, which is not that hard in the context of overall computational bandwidth, equals, I'm going to say $44.80 a week, which is $6.40 a day to run a Wildtrak, to tip fuel into it. I would argue that the cost of fuel is actually chump change to any person who can afford a new car today. The people who are hurting at the Bowser and at the supermarket checkout, they can't afford a new car. They already are not in the market for any new car. And this is a very serious society-wide problem that is affecting more and more Australians every day. People are stressed out of their brain over meeting their basic commitments, keeping the lights on, paying the rent, feeding the family. It's pretty freaking serious, right? But EVs cannot constitute any kind of cost of living countermeasure for people in this situation, because if you don't have the funds for any new car, a new car can't help. Pretty simple. Plus, quote, avoiding expensive mechanics with no apostrophe costs. New cars all have a 5-year warranty on average in Australia, right? So what mechanics costs, at least for the first 5 years, dude? And let's not forget that EVs are neither simpler nor more reliable than combustion cars. They're just not complex in the same way. They're freaking complex, but the complexity is different. There are 7,000 cells in a Tesla battery. That means there are 14,000 spot welds, and there's a cooling system and numerous other sensors for things like temperature, state of charge, state of discharge, things of that nature, right? Various limiting cutouts, whatever. There are protection mechanisms. This is neither a simple system nor one that is miraculously reliable just because there are no moving parts. Complexity is the enemy of reliability, and EVs are frickin' complex. These claims about saving money are just mythology. They're convenient, right? If you buy into the myth, then great. But if facts still matter, if we live in a world where facts matter, not so much. Like, what they're trying to do here is just say stuff over and over and over. If you say stuff often enough, someone's going to buy into your message. This is what lobby groups do. Looking ahead to 2025, we're optimistic that EV adoption in Australia will continue to grow, especially with the introduction of the new vehicle efficiency standard, which is set to deliver even more affordable and greater choice of low and zero emissions cars. It is a breach of ACCC guidelines to refer to EVs as, quote, zero emissions cars, because it's a fantasy and a liberty with the truth. Currently, the national grid produces on average 647 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. This data comes from the Australian Government Clean Energy Regulator, which has a convenient page called Electricity Sector Emissions and Generation Data 2022-23. We, the taxpayer, pay them to know this shit. And right down the bottom of that page, you're going to find a couple of meaningful numbers if you'd care to confirm any of this. Total energy production of 218 million megawatt hours and the total emissions of 141 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent. Crunch the numbers, dude, preferably without tripping over your junk, which is easy in cases such as this with so many zeros. you're going to get 647 grams per kilowatt hour. It just falls out on your lap. And it's going to be higher than that in reality in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, and that's where most of the EVs are. 1 kilowatt hour is going to take you about 6.5 Ks in a median EV, I suppose. So that's roughly 100 grams of CO2 per kilometre driven. If you plug in overnight or at a fast charger somewhere, this is what you are emitting. You can't escape it. You're just not emitting it out of a tailpipe. You are driving a remote combustion vehicle. Zero emissions EVs, complete myth. What's not a myth is if you buy, say, a Hyundai Kona Premium, the combustion one, it's going to cost you about $44,000 drive away. The electric equivalent, like this is an apples for apples, the combustion versus the EV car, the electric equivalent Kona is $74,000. It's $30,000 more expensive to own the EV off the bat. And I drove a Kona electric for a year and it was awesome. But the 30 grand, pretty hard to swallow in a cost of living crisis. Reaching milestones in EV adoption is exciting. Governments can build on this momentum by offering more incentives to improve EV affordability, expanding charging infrastructure, and updating regulations to support the sector's growth and create local jobs. Big G from the Electric Vehicle Council again, at least he is consistently on message with those buzzwords, baking, staking, whatever. I'd say A, get back to me when you actually reach that EV milestone, dude. And at the current growth rate of 3.8%, battery EV sales here in Shitsville are going to exceed 100,000 units just at the end of 2027. So if you don't mind, I'm not going to breath hold on that. It's called a fact. If you're in a lobby group, you might have to look that one up. Facts. I think they still exist. Facts are generally inconvenient. They tend to militate against the best interests of one's member organisations and are therefore only to be used, I suppose, A, as a last resort, or B, selectively after extensive grooming and massaging with spin. Speaking of the members, right, this is fascinating to me. The Electric Vehicle Council represents various widely acknowledged planet-saving champions, including Ampol, AGL, Ausgrid, Avis, BP, Coles, Combank, Europcar, Hertz, the novated leasing lobby group NALSPA, so that's a bit of lobby group inception there, lobby groups inside lobby groups inside lobby groups kind of thing. Plus Origin Energy, Shell, they're great for the environment. Super Cheap Auto, saving the planet, and Transurban. Love your work, Transurban, you Valvoline, Westpac, and let's not forget a bunch of finance companies. So thank God the planet is in safe hands. If you trust any of those fuckers to have the planet's back on this important issue, you are a far more trusting soul than me, dude. But I really do think this press release is, an outstanding effort by big-brained Mr. Gower and his fellow bakers over at the Electric Vehicle Council, expertly pushing the barrow for Shell, BP, Ampol, Transurban, and a bunch of coal-burning grid operators. Quick shout-out to them also. Fine members. Awesome stuff, dude. I had no idea you could package it quite that densely. It's like Thor's hammer, only made of bullshit, as opposed to, the heart of a neutron star. So, well done. However, if you don't mind, and for the sake only of academic comparison, I've taken the liberty of rewriting that release without what I see as all the bullshit, just to demonstrate how salient this feature of our culture actually is. Bullshit has clearly become the glue that binds vital members' agendas together, wraps them in green and disseminates them to the brain-dead media for wider public consumption. What a fantastic mechanism. You could think of my version, I suppose, which is, of course, totally impractical and completely unworkable. and a lot less sexy as the zero-emission version of that information. A quick shout out here too at this point. Well done to young Alex Unpronounceable over at Drive for not swallowing it all, hook, line and sinker, despite the somewhat enticing packaging. Perhaps there is hope at Nine's Death Star after all. Once again, congratulations to the Electric Vehicle Council for proudly setting a new record just before Christmas. Well done, dudes.